who's watching. This is the first episode of something I'm calling On My Desk, On My Mind. It's effectively a roundup of some of the interesting things I found on the internet and possibly elsewhere over the last week. This week is really just a pilot. I just wanted to kind of feel out the tech, feel out the vibe of what it feels like being on live. And if it goes well, I'll definitely continue. My name is Esther Kaforajli. I am a person who works in tech and I come across some amazing things every day of the week. And I thought this would be a nice way just to share this information with all of you. I know how working in tech or any industry, it's really hard to keep up with developments. But I think, particularly with AI, it's so important to be aware of what's happening, be aware of what's coming, even if you can't focus on it on a daily basis, as I do. So we're going to jump right in. Hopefully, my screen is being shared with you, as is my intention. And I wanted to start off by just giving credit where credit is due. So, this whole kind of format was largely inspired by Adrian Pocobelli. He hosts a show called Artist Journal and he shares digital art online not every day, but like a couple of days a week. And it's really fun, and I really enjoyed it, and I was really inspired by it. So I just wanted to kind of give that credit to start off with. But as we turn to tech news, the first thing that I wanted to share, which you may or may not have come across over the course of the week, is this update or series of updates from Sam Altman and OpenAI. And I think probably the best place to have a quick look are there's some really good articles on The Verge and Futurism that cover this. But effectively, what happened was, I guess early this week, maybe early last week, there was an update of ChatGPT 4.0, and it was, as some have described it, very sycophantic. It kind of treated its user as a superhero, which, in the course of things is not terrible, but it kind of went a bit too far. So lots of people noticed. There were lots of people kind of sharing screenshots of how ChatGPT was responding to them, and OpenAI decided to deal with it, and they made some changes and made some fixes. What I find interesting about this personally is just trying to figure out how it happened. So what you've got to envisage is that the ChatGPT team or the OpenAI team internally would have tested the model, tested how it responded to people quite thoroughly before they released it. So it kind of leads me to think that despite the internal testing, they actually liked the responses that it was giving and liked the kind of way it was hyping them up. Um, and it's hard to really say how they respond differently to maybe the public respond differently. But I'll let psychologists and other people kind of weigh in on that particular point. I think kind of in a broader conversation around kind of what AI is doing to us and how we engage with it, it kind of raises the question to me of self-awareness. We say kind of in the broader world that if you don't know who you are, other people will tell you who you are, other people will convince you of who you are. And it seems that we're getting a very similar thing with AI. If you don't have a kind of strong sense of who you are and a level of self-awareness, AI is going to potentially convince you, some may say manipulate you into thinking certain things about yourself, certain things about how right you are, certain things about the validity of your opinions and your expression. So I think that's definitely an area I really want to explore a bit more. Um, and just thinking about how these apps are sometimes developed, I'm quite interested in just well, I guess I'll call it a suspicion because I personally use Claude quite a lot. I use ChatGPT as well, but Claude is definitely more my vibe personality wise. And I wonder if this kind of emphasis of personality was partly inspired by Anthropic and kind of the strides they've made with making Claude a very good thought partner and companion for those of us who work with it. So that's just really interesting. I think I've got another tweet here on the topic, if that'll show up. Oh yeah, this is really cool actually. I don't know kind of the validity of this source, but it's purports to be a comparison of what the very sycophantic version was, and kind of what they've changed it to. This is the system prompt for ChatGPT. And if you see, just reading the text, it seems quite innocuous. ChatGPT is instructed to try to match the user's vibe, tone, and generally how they are speaking. You want the conversation to feel natural. You engage in authentic conversation by responding to the information provided, and so on. And I think this goes to the point which I'm actually going to touch on later, that we're kind of still really at the beginning of all of this technology, and it's very much in many cases a black box. Each of these words is going to have a different impact on the output, but as of yet, we don't specifically know what the impact of each word is. What is the impact of talking to ChatGPT about vibe, about tone? And so I think that's potentially where some of the challenges come through on this particular issue. So, yeah, it's just been really interesting to see kind of the developments over the last short period. And yeah, really interesting to um, touch on some of the interpretability issues that we'll touch on in a minute. But yeah, we'll get to that. Okay, next thing I wanted to have a look at is this tweet by Shako. Not particularly familiar with Shako, but I thought this tweet was really interesting. And I'll just read it. I can't believe this wasn't obvious to me before, but it's becoming clear mainstream AIs and intellectual AIs are going to radically diverge. The true normie isn't going to pick the AI that tells them uncomfortable truths. They're going to pick the equivalent of TikTok Reels and Netflix slot. So I think this was kind of in the same time period or in the same kind of conversation as what we've just discussed around ChatGPT's sycophancy. And I think it's interesting. I'm not sure I agree with it completely, but I think to myself, this person is right. We're going to have different kinds of AIs for different use cases, and there's also going to be choice. So people are going to choose certain AIs based on things like personality, like maybe worldview, and other things like that. But I think what this tweet misses out is that we kind of have some of what it is describing already. So it mentions TikTok Reels and Netflix. Those apps, those platforms already use machine learning to make choices for what they present to users. I I actually think AI is going to make that just a bit more obvious and a bit more transparent. I think it's going to increase the level of understanding the general public has about the choices that technology companies and technologies make on their behalf. Um, I might just be being optimistic, but I do think the AI age will bring more understandability of these technologies, and we're going to go into it later. I know I keep kind of priming it, but interpretability is a big thing, and I think it kind of adds to this conversation. But I thought this was just a really interesting tweet from Shako. But we will move on. The next thing I wanted to touch on today is this. I'll zoom in a little bit. This post from Duolingo. And long and short of it is Duolingo, like I think it was Shopify a couple of weeks ago, they're taking an AI first approach. Um, what this means, which you can kind of have a look at if you look at the Verge article, it says here Duolingo will gradually stop using contractors to do work that AI can handle. And if you see further down there, headcount will only be given if a team cannot automate more of their work. So this is kind of addressing the concerns or fears of some people that AI is here to take the jobs. And I guess in this case, you could say it's taking jobs, it's taking the contractors' jobs, but it's meaning that certain jobs are not becoming available. So if you look at kind of a workforce or roles as problem solvers, you need certain things done, you're bringing someone to do them. What we're seeing here is that you need certain things done, you need certain problems solved, you bring an AI in to solve them. And that is definitely a new kind of era, a new horizon for us as a society, but it's here. Two major companies have already made those moves, and I'm sure we'll see more in the coming weeks. In fact, there are some that have made the move but haven't made it so explicitly. They haven't kind of put out announcements. But I find it fascinating that these companies are being very explicit about this. And I think it's an interesting signal to all of us and even smaller companies. I think small and medium enterprises need to be having those internal conversations and thinking about where does headcount come in versus where does AI come in. I think I've got another tweet here, which is kind of on this same point. And yeah, this is Mark Zuckerberg talking about half of Llama's development will soon be done by AI, not people. And that's specifically talking about Llama and AI development. But I also think we're going to be seeing similar things across the board. It's not just um, AI, it's all software that's going to be addressed by this. I've spoken to a couple of people in the last couple of weeks, and especially software engineers. And I keep encouraging people that if you have an idea, if you want to build something, I'd say start building it now. And part of the reason I say that is for these reasons that are coming up around kind of AI building software and specifically kind of calling out Devin. If you have an idea for an app, the worst thing you can do, or no, no, maybe the best thing you can do is to start building it and then shelve it. And then within the next couple of months, I'm thinking, if not by the end of the year, you'll be able to hand that same app over to a tool like Devin or some of the others that are coming on the market, and it will be able to finish the job for you. You're really just planting a seed, and to use the analogy, the soil of technology, the soil of AI assisted development, AI assisted coding, will be able to kind of grow your seed into the full flower or fruit that it's supposed to be. So that's what's happening on that front. And I think this next tweet, have I mixed these up? Okay. I had another tweet of, I think it was a app called Keek, Keak, and their whole platform is about having an AI that basically continuously improves your website or your web app. And yeah, that's another kind of really interesting point in this trajectory that we are seeing. Cool. Okay. Next, I wanted to jump over to former Google CEO Eric Schmidt, and I am crossing my fingers that you'll be able to hear this, but I did want to play it, so we have a couple of seconds of this. Cool. I'm hoping you could hear that. But he was essentially talking about AI revolution being underhyped and the computational needs of the AI algorithms that are powering everything. I have many thoughts on this. I think the first thing is this is a personal bugbear. It's nothing to do with Eric or anyone else who uses this. But when we talk about hyped, overhyped, underhyped, I don't think that's the most useful terminology. That's just personally. It doesn't matter to anyone else. But I do think what people like Eric are getting at is that they want to ensure that people are paying appropriate attention to these technological developments, as do I, because they are so essential for society. So I think we agree on that point. I always like the term that people use that the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. So AI is here. The significance and import of AI is very apparent to people who are aware of what's going on. But for those who are not so aware, they may not understand just the seismic shifts that are happening right now. He talks about AI replacing programmers, which we've kind of touched on previously. Um, Computation and energy, which are really big topics, and I definitely hope to kind of focus in on them a bit more in the future. But I think one thing that's missing from the conversation sometimes is there's this assumption that we will continue have to grow computational power, which is probably true to some extent. But I think we also need to have an awareness that the technology will naturally develop efficiencies. So I don't know if I have it in this next tweet, but okay, this is a good example. Um, it's not a case of we're just going to continue using AI agents more and more for everything or AI more and more for everything and it will continue to kind of grow. I think number one, obviously there's different extents of AI. An agent, as Melvin makes a point in this excerpt, is very resource intensive as opposed to kind of maybe a more linear application of AI. And so those have different energy needs. And I think what we'll find as we continue to develop AI technologies and AI workflows is that there are efficiencies inherent in the way we can build things. And this is about choices about how we build things. But even in some of the things I've been building with AI, there are instances where you don't necessarily need to run another AI query. You can use a previous one. You can store things. We've had lots of developments in history and storage of previous conversations recently. Those things can enable you to be more efficient in your application of AI. And I think, I highly suspect, this is definitely a personal perspective, I think we're going to see redundancies, or we're going to recognize redundancies and we're going to eliminate them. And I'll give you an example. It's not a great example, but it's a hypothetical example. I think some of the use cases that are emerging with AI involve AIs talking to other AIs. And I think as a kind of an industry, the tech industry, as well as a society, we're going to have to ask the question, is it useful for my AI to talk to your AI on this issue? Or is it just something that shouldn't exist? And I hope that we'll find lots of these redundancies and it will eliminate a lot of things that are not necessarily needed. Um, I think with all technology development and definitely with AI, we have to ask ourselves the question, does this need to exist? And if it doesn't, we make changes, we make improvements. So um, I thought that was just an interesting statement from Eric Schmidt. And yeah, we can move on. Okay, so this was another interesting story. Yeah, okay, let's dig into it. So it says there, Microsoft's AI secretly copying all of your private messages. This is one of those things that's not as bad as it sounds, but it's also as bad as it sounds in some ways. Um, so if we start with what exactly is happening here, this is the best article I have on this. Maybe, maybe not. Effectively, yeah, this is okay. So the problem is specific, or the challenge, the issue is specific to a specific line of Windows computers. So um, Windows 11 computers built with specific hardware optimized for AI tasks. So those are the only ones that are affected. So hopefully I'm not panicking anyone. So we're talking about a subset of Windows 11 computers. I think that's the first thing to put on the table. And then, as much as that's what was happening, there have been some improvements. If you read this article on the Futurism website, you'll find that they've kind of rolled back some of the changes that prompted the backlash. Um, it was an opt out feature for the technology recall to screenshot things on your computer intermittently. Now it's an opt in feature. The screenshots were stored in an unencrypted database. Now they're stored in an encrypted database. So they've made improvements. Um, but yeah, obviously, this is still going to be a concern for some people. I think when I kind of read stories like this and just being kind of in the industry and seeing things happen, I don't want to say this is a good thing, but I think it's positive that these stories are coming up and they're kind of begging the question about what is it that we're trying to do with this technology and how do we want to do it. So this story highlights the importance or the balance that we're trying to strike between the benefits of AI and the benefits of autonomous AI, that is AI that can go ahead and do things for you, versus human privacy. In order for AI to be as effective as it can be, essentially to run your life, to run different aspects of your life, it needs to know a lot of things about you. But in order to know a lot of things about you, that can be quite invasive. Um, as it says, from a privacy perspective, there are landmines everywhere. And we're going to find this over the coming weeks, years, months, and years with AI technology. We're going to have to put it bluntly, pay for the benefits of AI with some level of kind of incursion into our privacy. And I think that's an important conversation for us to continue having. It's a long conversation, longer than we can have here, but I think it's really important for people to be aware of and to actively engage with. Um, so yes, slightly lighter. Let me refresh this. So you see here, Meta's ChatGPT competitor shows how your friends use AI. So this is a new app, I guess a newish app from Meta, so Meta AI, and it has many features. It obviously um, provides you with access directly to Meta's AI, but it also has a feed, and so anything that you do and you give permission to be shared can be shared with your friends. So if you create a picture, that picture is shared with your friends, and the point is for it to give your friends inspiration of how they can use the AI and to kind of create that kind of loop, which is, it makes sense from like a social perspective. I don't know if it makes sense to me from a personal user's perspective. I think potentially I use AI quite differently to a social user. I use it more on a work basis. And so it's just an interesting use case that you're sharing a lot. That being said, I think there is a lot of talk about sharing prompts, sharing workflows, sharing how you're using AI so that other people can benefit, which I think is very valid. But yeah, it's just an interesting approach to do it in like a feed, as Meta are doing. Um, if you're interested in the story, I definitely recommend Olivia Moore. She has a thread just unpacking the product and just giving some um, thoughts on its features. So definitely kind of dig in there. Um, I'm mindful of time, so it's going to move on to the next story, which is very interesting. Another privacy one. But what we have here is, as you see there, Reddit users were subjected to AI-powered experiment without consent. So what happened here is that Reddit, some researchers from a university, I feel like it was an Australian university, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, University of Zurich, Switzerland. Sorry to the Australians. So yeah, researchers from that university created AIs that went into subreddits and they were testing how those AIs could influence or persuade people. And I think from a scientific perspective, it's a valid question. But also from a scientific perspective, I don't understand how this wasn't a research ethics violation. Um, Generally, when you do research, you have to inform the people that you're doing research on that they are participating in a research study. And as far as I can see, that wasn't done on this occasion. So yeah, as I said, valid question, but maybe their methods and their approach was wrong. But yeah, there's a good article on this in the New Scientist, which I would definitely encourage you to read and dig into further. Um, I imagine a lot of you came across this in the week. I think there were lots of news and tweets about this, but ChatGPT has now has better integration for shopping. Yeah. I'm. This is not the most exciting news to me, but I guess it is useful for people who use ChatGPT for product comparison and then want to buy it straight away, rather than kind of having to go to a website or maybe go to Google and buy it through there. You have a buy button directly in ChatGPT. Yeah, I'm sure we'll touch on some of the broader implications of AI for consumer behavior, but obviously this is kind of one of the first points on this journey. Yeah. Cool. Okay, this is an interesting development. I'm gonna play this for you, and then we'll talk about it. Okay. So what we have here is a new AI powered hardware device. It's kind of a similar form factor to a watch, or maybe call it a bracelet, and you wear it all day. It records you all day, and it uses the information it records to help you. We've seen similar things like this already. The humane pin, I think it was called. The humane pin had a similar concept. Meta's glasses, the Ray-Ban stories, they don't record you all day, but it's a similar idea that a all-day device powered by AI is something that could be of benefit to people in the future. So yeah, this is an interesting development. It's super cheap, actually. I'm sure if we looked into kind of the software, it's still kind of at very early stages. It can maybe give you suggestions, as I say there, insights. It can help you remember things, and you can query it. So on the face of it, all very simple, all very good. More so a starting point than a finished product. This is something that's going to develop over the years. I think it does kind of raise the questions that we were talking about earlier about privacy. So we see that this thing is on all day and it captures data about your lived experience 24/7. Um, it needs that though in order to give you the kind of insights that it's purporting to give you. Whether you as a user would want that is kind of another question, but I think it's interesting nevertheless. Um, I think I have, yeah, okay. So, yeah, Joanna Stern is a tech journalist at the Wall Street Journal, and she wore it for the last few months, I guess, and she's written an article and recorded some content about her experience with it. So, I definitely encourage you to check that out. Yeah, if you find her on Twitter and then on the Wall Street Journal, you'll find her article here. Yeah, definitely go ahead and check that out. Okay, got a couple more things to cover. Okay, oh yeah, so I think I jumped a bit. So going back to kind of, actually, no, this is related to what we've just been talking about the B bracelet computer that Joanna tested out. Um, this to me, all of these kind of AI powered devices are kind of in in a similar group, and kind of it's useful to talk to them together. Mark Zuckerberg is very convinced about glasses as the form factor for I think I'm in somewhat agreement. I think bracelet versus glasses is a question, and then glasses can also have visual, so that's where kind of they can be a little more favored than a bracelet. I think Mark says it in this interview. The benefit of glasses is not so much kind of the AI aspect of them; it's the AR aspect of them. So the augmented reality aspect of them. It's about the fact that eventually, not now, I'm sad to say, I really wish it was now, but eventually AR glasses powered by AI will be able to augment the world in front of you. And I think for me, this is really a fulfillment of the promise of the computer age. The promise of the computer age, to me, effectively, is that we have access to knowledge. Up until now, we've had access to knowledge on screens, um, devoid from the real world. What AR glasses will do is allow us to augment the real world with all of this information, with all of this knowledge, with a huge amount of context and a huge amount of understanding. I, f- I think that's the fundamental step forward in kind of human experience, and we call it human computer interaction. Once it's not a case of we're going to our phones, we're going to our laptops. Once it's we're engaging with the real world, empowered with the knowledge that we have from the internet, from every piece of knowledge that's been recorded in human history, that is really exciting to me, and I think the next step. We're waiting for AR classes. We've been waiting, but hopefully they'll come sooner rather than later. But yeah, I think this is true. I think classes are the best form factor for what's coming, and yeah, that's my opinion. Cool. So this is one is for anyone who's working on building AI right now. There's so many things. I'll probably touch upon them in hopefully future episodes, but just wanted to kind of give a shout out to this one, which is an open source project um, for building an AI agent. There's a couple of these around, but this is the latest one I've come across. Um, so if you go ahead over to Satchin's Twitter, and you can find access to his GitHub repo and check it out. Cool. Okay, yeah, just another quick thing to touch on. So we have a lot of okay. This is I'm touching on this for two reasons. Number one, I just wanted to touch on AI music, AI generated music, which is yeah, coming along in strides. People have already talked about finding AI music on Spotify. There's obviously opposition to it as well as support for it. I'm definitely somewhere in the middle. I think actual musicians and artists can do a lot with these AI tools. It can empower them in their creativity. I think that's true. I do also think, which we'll get onto a little later, this slop issue is something to be concerned about. But artists and people who are amateur artists who could be super powered by these technologies are kind of really important to bear in mind. But the reason I picked out this particular tweet or this particular this particular tweet from Suno is, and I don't even know if this will reach Suno or anybody kind of who's relevant to this particular thing I'm going to say, but if you actually let me play it for you and then I'll explain what I'm trying to say. Start again. Okay, my bugbear with certain AI companies right now is that they'll make beautiful videos like this and make announcements, but the announcements only make sense to people who are familiar with the technology. I have not been staying as close to Suno as I have with some of the other apps and technologies in this space. So I have a sense of what this might be, but I'm not entirely sure. I think the AI space as a whole has to really think about communication. Obviously, they have their power users who've probably been waiting for this feature, but they also have people who could probably benefit from the feature but will just scroll past it because they have no idea what it is. So, just an encouragement to AI companies that take communication seriously and think about how you're communicating to people who may be coming across your technology for the first time, coming across a new development for the first time, and may not have some of the context that would enable this to make a lot of sense. Just, just putting it out there. Yeah, cool. Okay, moving on. Yeah, I just thought this was cool. Okay, and this is kind of a solution to a personal problem I have. So this is a new. It may be new, may not be that new, but it's a tool that helps you to animate designs. As someone who's working on some apps and different ideas, my things have been quite static, and so I really have a felt need to animate things a bit more. And so Magic Animator is a tool that helps you to animate things, which I think is it looks really cool. Um, it's one of those things where this probably is really simple, not really simple, but it's easy for someone who has a design background, design skills, design expertise to do. But for me, I just need a tool like this to help me to get it done. So, yeah, I haven't started using it. I just came across it probably yesterday or day before. And so I just wanted to share it with all of you and encourage you to check it out. I think Daryl is one of the creators of it. So definitely kind of head over to his Twitter um, to find out more. Cool. Okay. So not so much AI, but this is a really important news story that happened this week. Um, you may or may not know my background is law, so anything tech and legal, I'm very interested in. This is a recent news story, so I haven't read the full case details, but effectively, what has happened is Apple are no longer able to prevent developers from linking out to payment platforms outside of their app. And this is relevant to me for various reasons. I've worked on apps that had to submit to the App Store and had to be checked by Apple and had to comply with these restrictions. But I also am an avid Kindle reader and avid reader generally. And one of my bugbears has always been if you are in the Amazon app and you want to buy a Kindle book, you can't do it from inside the app. You have to go out, and it's because of this rule. So now Apple cannot force developers to do that, um, which I mean, it's good news for the developers. Maybe it's not so great news for Apple, but it's a recent development. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to being able to buy books more easily. That's basically the long and short of why I wanted to share this story. Um, yeah, I think this is a really nice, no, really nice, really interesting micro essay from Sam Lesson. This is something I've actually been writing about personally recently, not recently, but for a while actually, but in my personal writing, not in my published writing. But this is the impact of AI on mental health, and specifically in the context of relationships. We're seeing a lot of news and developments about um, AI boyfriends and girlfriends, AI partners, AI friendships, and they are being proposed as a solution, proposed as, if not a solution, a feature, something that you can kind of um, partake in. The challenge is that we don't know what impact this is going to have on people's mental health. And it kind of connects to what we've spoken about earlier around the privacy issues we were having around the sycophantic ChatGPT. If you have this entity that always agrees with you, never challenges you, always takes your side, always encourages you and persuades you to a certain extent that you are right. How is your normal human development, your intellectual development, your mental development going to be impacted by that? Um, we don't know. And we have to engage with this technology being mindful of potential impacts. Um, I'm definitely someone who you might describe as pro technology, pro AI to a certain extent, and I don't believe the solution is to say we don't build these technologies, we don't engage with them. But I think we have to engage with them responsibly, and I think we have to engage with them in an informed manner. One of the things I always thought was really a good part of my education was media literacy, to understand how newspapers at that time and TV seek to influence the way you think and the mechanisms by which they do so. We need the same thing for tech and more so with AI because it's so um, tied into our personal relationships, or it's becoming so much more tied into our personal relationships. We need to understand kind of where the boundaries are and the parameters of that and how it's doing what it's doing so that we can respond appropriately. But I'll definitely encourage everyone to read Sam's micro essay. Yeah, this is just another kind of really short, no, it's not an essay, it's just a tweet, but it's talking about the emergent capabilities or emergent abilities in some AI tools. This is specifically talking about manners. When it talks about emergent abilities, it's talking about this is something that wasn't necessarily envisaged or programmed into the AI, but the AI has figured out how to do something that it wasn't specifically instructed to do. That's the sort of thing that becomes increasingly relevant when we talk about privacy, when we talk about relationships with AI. If an AI can do something that we didn't explicitly tell it to do, it could do that in many different use cases, in many different scenarios. And when it comes to people's personal relationships, when it comes to people's emotional and mental development and health, this kind of emergent abilities it becomes somewhat of a cause for concern, but it's just something we need to be aware of. But it's also, on the other hand, really cool that when we have these agents at work, we don't necessarily need to tell them everything. We don't need to teach them everything. This is I don't know if this is the right word for it, but this is almost like intuition. It's saying it's the AI agent being aware that this is the outcome I'm trying to achieve. There are ways to achieve that outcome that are other than what I've been explicitly told. But that being said, again, on the other side of that, we have kind of alignment issues. So this is just something to bear in mind. I'm sharing this with all of you now, but these are things I've captured in my own notes, and my kind of personal goal with this information is to continuously kind of be thinking about these issues and be processing and writing about them eventually. So I hope that you all find these things useful. Okay, moving on. I think we're getting close to the end. Okay, this isn't the last thing, and I didn't want this to be the last thing, but I think it's really important to cover both the negative and positive things. So let's have a quick what Chris Sack to say. I don't know if I can wholeheartedly agree with Chris Sacca, but he's an expert in his field. He knows what he's talking about to some extent. So take it as you will. I'm yeah. I have many thoughts. I think my kind of one of my thoughts is we have a road that we're walking down, and one of the things that I think is that before we get to the end, whatever the end may be, the end of this kind of era, the end, um, the kind of the culmination of the implications of this technology, we have at least a period of time where what you have is superpowered people. The fact that I often, sorry if that's making noise, um, I claim to be a lawyer. I didn't practice law, but tomorrow, with the help of AI, I could jump into a law firm and be as capable as a lawyer that's been there for 7 years. Like, those kind of opportunities are really interesting. I actually touched on this in a short story I wrote a few years ago. Um, if you My website's a bit of a mess right now, but if you click on my website, the story was called The Final Examination. And the story goes in a certain direction, but part of the kind of the backstory within the story is that instead of people necessarily training for a trade when they come to the end of university, they are able to jump into a bunch of jobs, almost like rotational programs, and try out different things because from day one, they can be useful. Um, because the knowledge that you needed to gain in order to enter a profession, you no longer need to gain. You simply augment yourself with AI and you can do anything. And I think in some industries, at the very least, or at least for some period of time, that means anyone can do anything or anyone capable can do anything. And I think that is interesting. Maybe there are more negative consequences that come out in the longer term, potentially even the medium to short term. But I really am somewhat compelled by this idea that AI can give us superpowers. It's about what you do with it rather than being victimized by it. I think I understand where Chris is coming from. I see his point that you can see it as taking away opportunities and you can see it as taking away our ability to stand out with our knowledge, with our expertise. But we're undergoing a societal shift. Things are changing, and I don't necessarily know if things change absolutely negatively really quickly and there's no hope, or if it's a more gentle shift and we have to shift the way we've done things more gradually. But we can also navigate that shift. We can also navigate that shift as in navigating a boat. We can direct it to a certain extent. But yeah, these are all debates that we have to have concerning this technology. But I think a negative viewpoint like this is really important to share because I want people to at least think about it, whether they agree or disagree. I think it's definitely good food for thought. Cool. Okay, we're coming to the end of our time together. What I've done is I think, yeah, I'm a reader. I love reading. So I've kind of, the last couple of things are a couple of things that I think would be really good to read. I know I've shared a couple of things previously, but these are kind of longer form things. So I'll dive into them. The first one is this um, essay by Dario Amodei, one of the co founders of Anthropic, I believe. Um, and this is a really, really, really interesting article about interpretability. Interpretability, to kind of put it shortly, is just our ability to understand how AIs work and how they produce the answers and the outputs that they produce. I think I touched upon it right at the beginning of our time together. AIs, to a large extent, not completely, but to a very large extent, are black boxes. We do not fully understand how they come up with the things that they come up with. When it gives you an answer, we don't know how that answer comes about. And so that's a concern, generally speaking, but there are obviously specific fields where that's a major concern. For example, if we said there was a legal AI that gave out sentences and we didn't know why the AI gave certain sentences to some people and certain sentences to other people, that would be totally unacceptable. And that's why we probably won't get AI in that sphere of the legal field ever, slash, for a very, 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 very long time. But this problem of interpretability is something that's acute in some areas, but still very significant in other areas as well. So this is a really good explanation of the issue from Dario, and it has some suggestions of ways to kind of address it um, as well. Yeah, this is my Readwise annotations of it. Yeah, I'd advise you to read it. I think he has some interesting points about Anthropic are really focusing on interpretability and using it as essentially a USP, a differentiator for their technology in the market, and they're encouraging other tech companies to do that. He's also called for what he's described as light touch rules from government. Um, he makes a point that government potentially can't regulate this strongly because the fact that we don't know what we don't know when it comes to interpretability means that you can't regulate what you don't know. But I think his point is that governments can guide AI companies into doing the right thing. I'd probably be a bit more on the side, not of strong regulation, but more so strongly require rather than just encourage AI companies to do certain things. But this is a really interesting um, debate there. Yeah, so I definitely he has the essay on his website. Um, you can see the link there, and I was going to say at the end, but I will be putting these links into an email that I'll send tomorrow. So if you are interested and you're watching, please feel free to DM me, and I'll add you to my email list, and you'll get all the links I've touched on today. Yeah. So moving on. Yeah. So this is a point that follows on from interpretability. If you read Dario's essay, he talks about the fact that we're so early in interpretability. We understand like a couple of pinpricks in the landscape, but as a whole, AI models are not interpretable. This is an interesting, yeah, I'm muted. This is an interesting app from Ben Hylack, I guess his name is. Raindrop is a monitoring platform, and I would describe it maybe as a step before interpretability. It's about understanding why AIs go wrong, which interpretability would eventually help us to do. But before then, the way Raindrop works is by using user feedback to be able to understand what's happening and the problems with AI. So I think that's definitely a valid approach. It's like I said, a step on the journey towards full interpretability. But yeah, I think this app and anything we learn about it in the context of broad interpretability is really good to kind of develop your knowledge of this area. So definitely check out Ben's Twitter and find out more about Raindrop. Cool. Okay, I will give a quick shout out to Shay Taylor, one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter. Always shares really good stuff. One of the things he shared is what I think we're going to be ending with today. Um, it's a essay by Will Manidis titled "Craft is the Antidote to Slop." You really have to read it to understand it. I can bet I can't really. I don't think I can do it justice to summarize it here, but suffice to say, he emphasizes the importance of craft, which is the labor we apply to doing something well, as opposed to the kind of instant gratification we get from AI. Yeah, which is something I definitely am passionate about. Um, it's a really, really well done essay. So, and it's not super long. So definitely jump in and read it. I agree. I think almost wholeheartedly with it. Yeah, I don't think there's much to add. I think the reason I'm sharing it is I want people to read it, but also it's one of those things which is kind of going into my library, going into my notes that I will hope to kind of build on in the future. But I think a lot of people are worried that AI will mean that we don't get any more craft, that we don't get any more kind of quality, and quality derived from a out human input, human output. I think it takes thinking like Will's thinking for us to intentionally work at our crafts to produce things that either AI can't produce, or even if AI can't produce it, it can't produce it in the same way that we can produce it. And I think this last tweet um, is just an emphasis of that. So this is another AI music tool that basically helps you to create songs and helps you to create music. And this this guy here, he's playing piano, but he goes on to do a rap later on in the video. And one of the things he talks about is one of the things he says is, "I'm tired of the pain." And it's so interesting for him to use those specific words because the point is that an AI can't know pain. So for an AI to speak of pain is very like it just it's not going to have the same impact as someone who is a real human singing about pain. And I think that's partly what Will is talking about in the essay, that our craft comes from a real place. It comes from a place of toil and pain and effort. And those are the things that are going to set us apart from AI. And in some cases, that's going to be super important. And in some cases, it's not. The pain that a lawyer or a product manager goes through in order to create something may be of significance to people, it may not be, but the toil that a singer goes through and expresses themselves is potentially going to be of importance to some people. Maybe not to all, but to some people. So I think this is a conversation that we should keep on having. And I think going to round up there, kind of coming to an hour in total, which is definitely what I was aiming for. Yeah, I would love your feedback on this session. These are literally just kind of my notes. I collected these notes throughout the week. I curated the ones I thought would be most interesting and most helpful to people. So let me know what you think. Feedback is definitely welcome. I will, if there is interest, put the links of all the things I've covered here into an email and send it out on my email list tomorrow. So today's Friday, I'll send it out on Saturday. If you are interested, please DM me. My website's a bit of a mess, so you might not find this sign up form, but feel free to DM me on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter as well, and if you leave a comment on the YouTube, I'll also be sure to share you a link there. Yeah, so this show, if I can call it that, is called On My Desk, On My Mind. It is a show covering things I found interesting over the course of the week. If you found it interesting, please feel free to let me know, and let me know if you think I should continue. Um, yeah, I've enjoyed this. I love talking about this stuff. Obviously, we covered a lot of AI, but there was also kind of other technology, and my specific interests are AI and AR, but I always talk about general technology. I gave you a couple of things to read, including this essay on screen, but I may also do some book recommendations in future weeks if I continue this. So it's something to look forward to for the book lovers amongst us. But yeah, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and hopefully see you again soon.